I can assure you this committee will succeed in holding the Bidens accountable. So much of the evidence of wrongdoing from this family is located in that hard drive that you all led the American people to believe was Russian disinformation, when in fact it was not.
Well, the first hearing into Hunter Biden's laptop story cover-up has finished. This specific hearing, run by the House Oversight Committee, is looking into Twitter's involvement in the 2020 cover-up. On October 14, 2020, the New York Post ran a story on Joe Biden's son, detailing how they had in their possession his laptop, which was a tangled web of personal and professional scandals. Within it was alleged dodgy deals with foreign countries, as well as incriminating photos and videos of Hunter engaging in sex acts and taking illicit drugs. The story detailed Hunter's working relationship with the Ukrainian energy firm Burisma Holdings and the fact that Joe Biden was named as meeting members of the company. This was only 3 weeks away from the 2020 presidential election, so it was gearing up to make waves during the campaign. The story was believed to potentially be an act of Russian disinformation, a tool used to influence a presidential election. So much so that Twitter shut down the New York Post account for 2 weeks and blocked any user from sharing the story, even through direct message. This kind of censorship, we have now learnt in the last few months, is reserved for severe cases such as child pornography. Over the last few years, content inside the laptop has been verified as authentic, prompting Republicans to vow that they will investigate the laptop and Twitter's involvement if they won back control of the House at the midterms. In November last year, they did just that. The Republican Party won back control of the House, and here we are in early February, already into the first hearing into the president's son's laptop. 4 former Twitter executives faced questioning today as they were subpoenaed by their own request. These include former Twitter Deputy General Counsel James Baker, ex-Head of Trust and Safety Yoel Roth, former Policy Director Vijaya Gadde, and former employee and whistleblower Annika Collier-Navaroli. The first 3 former employees spoke about Twitter's decision to censor the story, while Ms. Navaroli spoke mostly about Twitter's response to the January 6th Capitol riots. Let's get into some of the highlights of what took place, but I'm mindful that not everything was covered in this rundown. To start off, in her opening statement, Vijaya Gadde claimed in 2020 Twitter were trying to avoid becoming a dumping ground for hacked materials, a policy they applied to the New York Post article. The former staffer said Twitter users were still allowed to discuss and describe the contents of the laptop, but were banned from sharing the article. After 24 hours of that censorship, Twitter reversed the ban but told the Post they could use their account once they deleted the original article. After the Post refused to delete the original tweet, in hindsight, Ms. Gadde says Twitter should have reinstated the Post account immediately and not given them the 2-week suspension. Roth ran the Trust and Safety team. In his opening remarks, he said that in 2017, his team had uncovered significant interference in American election by agents of the Russian government. He said at the time, his team and him exposed hundreds of thousands of accounts looking to instill culture wars into the Twitter sphere whilst an election was on. He's referring to the 2016 presidential election there. What he and his team learnt from that experience, he said that they took when the Hunter Biden laptop story came to light. He said in 2020, when the contents of Hunter's laptop were leaked by the Post, at first glance it drew similarities to the 2016 Russian hack and leak operation. Mr. Roth makes it clear Twitter should not have blocked the access to the story, claiming they acknowledged that error 24 hours later by reversing the ban. He said in the moment with limited information, Twitter made a mistake by preventing links to the New York Post story and from being shared. Yoel Roth speaks on this, claiming Twitter was eager not to repeat past mistakes.
But the decisions here aren't straightforward, and hindsight is 2020. It isn't obvious what the right response is to a suspected but not confirmed cyber attack by another government on a presidential election. I believe Twitter erred in this case because we wanted to avoid repeating the mistakes of 2016. And so the basic job of trust and safety is to try to strike this balance between the harms of restricting too much speech and the dangers of doing too little. I'll be the first to admit that we didn't always get it right.
Mr. Roth, later questioned by Congressman Stephen Lynch, was asked about the comparison of the 2 scandals happening before presidential elections.
So Roth, why would Twitter have been stupid to ignore that risk?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I think Twitter and the entire social media industry were frankly caught with their pants down in 2016 and missed an opportunity to do the critical work of protecting election security. This isn't my judgment. This is the judgment of academics and researchers who have spent years studying Russian active measures. And most of their conclusions suggest that the number one most influential part of the Russian active measures campaign in 2016 was the hack and leak targeting John Podesta. It would have been foolish not to consider the possibility that they would run that play again.
But not everyone believes this hearing needed to even occur. New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took the opportunity to swipe the New York Post and her fellow committee members, saying they should be spending this time on more important matters.
So they've dragged a social media platform here in Congress. They're weaponizing the use of this committee so that they can do it again. A whole hearing about a 24-hour hiccup in a right-wing political operation. That is why we are here right now. And it's just an abuse of public resources, an abuse of public time. We could be talking about healthcare. We could be talking about bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. We could be talking about abortion rights, civil rights, voting rights. But instead, we're talking about Hunter Biden's half-fake laptop story. I mean, this is an embarrassment.
Despite originally claiming he didn't know if the laptop was his, last week Hunter Biden's lawyers wrote a letter to the Department of Justice and the Delaware Attorney General requesting a criminal investigation to be launched into certain individuals who were responsible for violating federal laws and accessing, copying, manipulating and/or disseminating Mr. Biden's personal computer data. James Comer questioned Vijaya Gaddy on this news update, wondering if she ever called Hunter Biden's lawyers or representatives to ask if the laptop was his.
So, Ms. Gaddy, on October 14, 2020, did Hunter Biden report to Twitter that he was the victim of a hack?
No, I don't believe he did.
Ms. Gaddy, when the New York Post initially broke the story about the laptop, did you call Hunter Biden's lawyer to ask if it was authentic?
No, I did not.
Isn't it correct that the Biden campaign had contact with Twitter in the run-up to the 2020 election?
Not to my knowledge.
And you're telling this committee that you didn't ask any Biden representative if the laptop was real or for Hunter Biden's attorney's phone number to confirm its authenticity?
We did not speak to anybody related to that.
In December, now Twitter owner Elon Musk tweeted that James Baker was exited from the company for his alleged involvement in the Hunter Biden cover-up. That's because he was named in journalist Matt Taibbi's published internal communications that Elon Musk had given him access to. In early deliberations over whether the laptop was in fact Hunter Biden's, James Baker can be seen in emails saying that he supports the conclusion that we need more facts to assess whether the materials were hacked. At this stage, however, it's reasonable for us to assume that they may have been, and that caution is warranted. In his opening statement, Baker claims that he never acted unlawfully in regards to Hunter Biden's laptop, backing up those emails that he was just urging caution and needed more information to assess the credibility of the laptop. James Comer questioned Mr. Baker on whether he asked any of his contacts at the FBI about the materials being hacked.
Are you aware that the FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop since December of 2019?
I'm sorry, am I aware of that now?
Well, were you aware then?
Then, no. I don't believe, sir, that to the best of my recollection, I don't think I knew.
But you're aware now?
I've heard that now, yes.
Mr. Baker, did you call any of your contacts at the FBI to ask whether or not they knew if the material had been hacked?
I don't recall contacting them about that on that day.
There has been a lot of noise surrounding the FBI's involvement in the cover-up, with questions over if the Bureau contacted Twitter and said the laptop story was disinformation. Mark Zuckerberg had previously said the FBI did tell him that Facebook should be on high alert, but didn't specifically say it was Hunter Biden related. Zuckerberg later told Joe Rogan it fit that pattern. Congressman Jim Jordan questioned James Baker on if the FBI had involvement in Twitter's decision-making.
Mr. Baker, you said you didn't talk with the FBI that day. Did you talk to the FBI about the Hunter Biden laptop story prior to then or after that day?
I'm trying to make sure I can answer this question consistent with the restrictions that I talked about in my opening
Simple
statement.
question. You
Yeah.
talked to the FBI about the Hunter Biden story.
I do, to the best of my recollection, I did not talk to the FBI about the Hunter Biden story before that day.
Did you talk to him after it? You said your
don't
response
recall.
is real. Your response is real specific to the chairman. You said, I did not talk to the FBI about the Hunter Biden laptop story that day. I assume that day is October 14th. I want to know if you talked to him on the 13th or before, or if you talked to him on the 15th and after.
I don't recall speaking to the FBI, sitting here today, I don't recall speaking to the FBI at all about the Hunter Biden matter.
On the same note of what AOC was saying before, Congressman Daniel Goldman agreed the hearing was a waste of taxpayer dollars. Specifically, he mentions part of the New York Post's original story, which detailed through the contents of the laptop that Joe Biden was involved in pressuring government officials in Ukraine into firing a prosecutor who was investigating the company, Burisma Holdings, which Hunter Biden was on the board of. He backed up the now president.
Are you admitting that Joe Biden did get the prosecutor in Ukraine fired?
I think it's very clear that Vice President Biden, along with all of our allies in Europe, pressured Ukraine to fire a corrupt prosecutor general who was not charging corruption cases that would have included potentially Burisma.
Beckett Ballant questions Ms. Gaddy on whether anyone from the Biden camp and Democratic National Committee had anything to do with the censorship of the story.
Did anyone from the Biden campaign or the Democratic National Committee direct Twitter to remove or take action against the New York Post story?
No.